Black
finished here.
CEO
Get her out
denied
of my sight
service at
right
bank.
now.
10
I want her
minutes
escorted
later,
off the
she
premises
owned
immediately.
the whole branch.
Here are the
Hello
documents
everyone,
requested for
before we
transfer,
begin
along with my
today's
ID.
video, I
Thank you.
need your
We'll need
help.
to review these closely,
We've
and this account has
noticed
been
that the
flagged.
channel is
I want you out
losing
of my bank this
traction, and
instant.
subscribing is one of the
Ma'am,
best
you need
ways
to come with
you
me
can
right
help
now.
us. It's quick, free, and
I'm
allows
gonna
us
have
to
to ask you to
continue
leave
bringing
immediately,
you
ma'am.
great
We know who you are.
content. Your support means everything. Let's
Look at the
keep this
screen.
channel
What is
growing
happening?
collectively. Where are
God,
you
we've lost
watching from?
everything.
Drop
The
your
system is
city or
compromised.
country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's get back to the story. Get her out. Now. The voice cracked through the marble lobby like thunder ricocheting off glass. Heads turned. Phones paused mid-scroll. The morning hum of the downtown bank died instantly. At the center of it all stood Ava Johnson, black woman, early 30s, in a pale pink silk blouse and tailored slacks. Calm posture. Eyes steady. She didn't flinch when the manager jabbed a finger inches from her face. The man's suit screamed authority. His words reeked of arrogance. "You think you can just walk in here and demand a wire transfer that big?" he spat. "We don't entertain scams here, ma'am." The guard beside him, broad shoulders, shaved head badge gleaming, stepped forward, his hand hovering at Ava's elbow like she was a threat to national security. Customers shifted uncomfortably. A mother pulled her child closer. An old man whispered, "What's happening?" Someone murmured, "Probably a fake account." Ava heard it all. She'd heard versions of it her whole life. Her voice, when it came, was even precise. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need to access my business account." The manager laughed, sharp, humorless. "Your business account? With us, I doubt it." He leaned in close tone, dripping with disdain. "Security, remove her. Now." The guard's hand tightened. Ava didn't move. Behind the counter, a young teller froze, eyes flicking between the computer screen and Ava's ID still lying on the marble desk. The name glowed on the system. Familiar somehow. Before she could speak, the manager slammed the keyboard shut. "I said out." The sound echoed like a gavel. The guard gripped Ava's arm. For a split second, the world shrank to that touch, firm, unnecessary, and so familiar it hurt. 15 years ago, she'd stood in another lobby, smaller, cheaper, being told she didn't look professional enough for finance. Different man, same tone, same story, but not the same woman, not anymore. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now back to Ava. The guard tugged her toward the glass doors. The crowd parted like obedient silence. The manager called after them, voice booming with false righteousness. "We protect real clients here." That line hung in the air like smoke. Ava turned her head just enough to meet his eyes. She didn't speak. Didn't need to, because power, real power, doesn't shout. Somewhere in her mind, the ticking began. 10 minutes. That's all she would need. Outside, the sun caught the shimmer of her pink blouse. Inside, the manager adjusted his tie, satisfied he'd done his job. He had no idea that the woman he'd just ordered out of his bank owned the building, the branch, and his next paycheck. 10 minutes earlier, the same lobby, bright, polished, indifferent. Sunlight poured through the glass facade, bouncing off chrome counters and silent security cameras. People came and went in tidy lines, the rhythm of ordinary business. Ava Johnson pushed through the revolving door, one hand clutching a thin leather folder. Her blouse, rose pink and pressed to perfection, caught the light like confidence made visible. She smiled politely at the greeter near the desk. "Good morning," she said. The man looked up, nodded, the kind of nod that said, "I don't really see you." She moved toward the counter, her heels clicking softly, controlled, deliberate. There was no entourage, no badge, no chauffeur waiting outside. That was the point. For 3 years, she'd owned this bank through a holding company no one ever traced to her name. Today, she wanted to walk in as anyone else, to test the system that claimed to value all clients equally. Behind the counter, a young teller noticed her first. "Welcome. How can I help you?" Ava slid her ID and documents forward. "I'd like to verify a corporate wire transfer. It should be under the Johnson Holdings account." The teller type smiled faintly, then frowned. "Could you wait one moment?" Across the floor, the branch manager spotted the hesitation. He strode over polished shoes slicing against marble. "Problem here?" he asked, voice already thick with impatience. The teller opened her mouth, but he cut her off. "Miss, I'm afraid we can't process this without proof of authorization." Ava blinked calm. "That's what the documents are for." He barely glanced at them. "We've had fraud attempts this week. You'll need to verify your employer first." She raised an eyebrow. "My employer? Yes, whoever you work for?" He gave a tight smile, the kind reserved for people he thought beneath him. Ava's eyes lingered on his name tag, R. Collins, branch manager. The irony almost made her laugh. "Is there a senior officer available?" she asked evenly. He straightened, offended. "You're speaking to one." Around them the line grew. Someone sighed loudly. A guard shifted near the entrance. Ava's calm wasn't the silence of submission, it was calculation. Every word, every movement she stored like evidence. Inside her mind, the same phrase echoed, "Still happening." After all these years, the manager leaned closer. "Look, Mrs., we don't handle this kind of money without due diligence. You can come back with your boss." Her lips curved slightly. "My boss," she repeated, soft as silk. He nodded. "Exactly. Tell him to call me." The teller looked uneasy. "Sir, maybe we should." But he waved her off. "Enough. We can't waste time." Ava picked up her ID, her folder, and smiled again. Small, composed, unreadable. "I understand," she said quietly. 10 minutes should be enough. He frowned. Enough for what? She turned away without answering. Her phone buzzed once in her pocket, a calendar reminder. Board meeting in 45 minutes. As she walked toward the waiting area, the soft chime of her heels marked the seconds like a countdown, only she could hear. Each tick whispered the same truth. They didn't recognize her. They never did. And that was always their first mistake. The clock on the wall ticked loud enough to feel personal. 5 minutes had passed since Ava was told to come back with her boss. Now the lobby hummed with suspicion. She stood by the waiting chair's folder, resting on her lap posture, perfect. The manager whispered with 2 tellers near the counter, his voice low but sharp, the kind of whisper meant to be overheard. Every now and then his eyes flicked toward her like she was an equation that didn't add up. "Security," he muttered finally, waving one hand. A guard by the entrance straightened. Ava watched the movement through the glass reflection, calm, detached. She'd seen that dance before when someone decides your skin color is evidence, your calmness is defiance, and your confidence must be arrogance. "Madam," the guard said as he approached, "could I see your ID again?" His tone was careful, but the kind of careful that only came after suspicion had already been made. "Of course," she said, handing it over. The guard studied it longer than necessary. "This address, it's corporate property." "Yes," Ava replied. "You work there." Her lips twitched. Something like that. At the counter, the manager leaned closer to another employee. "She's probably one of those online scammers," he said under his breath. Unfortunately for him, the microphones on the security cameras caught everything. The teller he'd scolded earlier, the young one, looked uncomfortable. "Sir, her name?" "I think I've seen it before," he snapped. "You think too much. Get back to work." Ava heard the click of the guard's radio. "Manager Collins, do you want me to escort her outside?" The word escort echoed through the room like a slow insult. Several heads turned. One woman in line whispered, "I told you, fake documents." Another snorted, "These people always try something." Ava's fingers traced the edge of her folder, not out of nerves but control. Every breath was measured, slow, deliberate. She wasn't angry, not yet. She looked at the young teller again, the only one who seemed unsure, and offered a small smile, gentle, forgiving, almost maternal. It made the girl flinch with guilt. "Miss the guard," said again, firmer now. "We're going to have to ask you to step outside while we verify your information." Ava tilted her head slightly. "Is that protocol or prejudice?" The guard blinked. "Ma'am, please." Her voice stayed level. "I've given you identification, business registration, and an account number. If that's not enough, maybe the problem isn't paperwork." Behind her, someone scoffed. "Here we go." The manager came forward again, all fake professionalism. "Listen, Miss Johnson, we're not saying you did anything wrong, but until this is cleared, we can't have you disrupting operations." "Disrupting," she repeated softly. By waiting quietly, he hesitated. "It's not personal, isn't it?" The air thinned. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause. For a heartbeat, the entire lobby was frozen, the kind of silence that exists right before something irreversible happens. Ava rose, slowly gathering her folder. Every movement graceful, unhurried, the choreography of someone who already knows how this ends. "Very well," she said quietly. "Let's finish this your way." As she turned toward the doors, the young teller's eyes followed her, confusion blooming into dread. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. The manager didn't notice. He was too busy feeling victorious, too busy believing he'd won some small moral battle. But 10 minutes later, his name would be trending, and not for a promotion. The moment the doors closed behind Ava, the lobby exhaled a long collective sigh of relief, like justice had been restored. Conversations resumed, papers, shuffled screens blinked back to life. Only one person didn't move. Her name was Emily Carter, 24, first year at the branch. She stared at the transaction log still open on her screen, the account name glowing in bold Johnson Holdings Capital Group. Her pulse quickened. She'd seen that name 2 days ago in an internal memo marked executive ownership. She scrolled again, eyes wide. There it was, the same signature. Ava L. Johnson, founder and CEO. "Sir," she called softly, "can I talk to you for a second?" Manager Collins barely looked up. "If it's about that woman, drop it." "But I said drop it." He straightened his tie and gave a smug little chuckle. "We dodged a bullet. That one looked ready to start trouble." Emily's throat tightened. She looked at the guard, still near the door, his radio buzzing faintly. "She wasn't starting trouble," she murmured. "What was that?" Collins barked. "Nothing, sir." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She hesitated, then pulled up the corporate database. Every key click felt like rebellion, and then it hit her. This wasn't just another client. This was the client. From the corner of her eye, she saw 2 other employees gossiping near the break room. "Did you see her face?" one whispered. "The nerve. Coming in here dressed like she owns the place." Emily's stomach turned. She did own the place. She stood up, heart hammering, and walked toward Collins. "Sir, you need to see this," he sighed theatrically. "Emily, for God's sake, no, please, look." She spun the screen toward him. The manager's grin faded as his eyes met the document. For a few seconds, silence. Then, defensively, "That could be fake." "It's not," Emily said quietly. "It's from the executive server." He stared, processing. And like every man too deep in his own arrogance, he made the worst choice possible. "Delete it," he ordered. "We'll verify later." "I won't," she said before she could stop herself. The words hung there, trembling in the air between them. The guard glanced over. A few customers looked up. Collins' jaw tightened. "Excuse me, I said I won't delete it. You just kicked out the CEO of our parent company." The color drained from his face. "You'd better be wrong," he whispered. Emily turned back to her monitor, clicked a single key, and the system pinged, "Executive account priority alert sent." Across town, inside the glass tower headquarters, a digital alarm flashed on the main boardroom screen. One of Ava's assistants looked up, frowning. "Protocol 9 just activated," he said. Back in the branch, Emily tried to steady her breathing. Collins was already pacing, muttering, dialing numbers that no one answered. The guard stood still, unsure who was the threat anymore. For the first time, the lobby wasn't calm, it was charged. Every light felt too bright, every second stretched too long. Emily whispered to herself, almost prayer-like, "Please, let her come back." The automatic doors hissed open again. Every head turned like the wind itself had walked back in. Ava stepped through her pink blouse, catching the light in soft defiance. The guard froze. The manager stiffened. Emily's heart nearly stopped. She didn't rush. She didn't speak. She just walked each step, a quiet verdict. The air was thick enough to taste. "Miss Johnson," Collins' stammered voice cracking, "there seems to be some misunderstanding." Ava's eyes met his, calm, cold, unreadable. "I'm sure there is." He tried to laugh, but it came out thin and desperate. "We were just verifying a few things, you know, for security." Ava's silence was heavier than accusation. She reached for the folder still in her hand and placed it on the nearest counter, precise, deliberate. Her hand brushed against the cool marble surface. It reminded her of something. Flashback, 16 years earlier. A young Ava, barely 18, standing in a different office. A job interview that lasted 5 minutes. A white recruiter leaning back in his chair, smiling the way pity smiles. "You've got spirit," he'd said, "but clients might not take you seriously. You know, presentation matters." That same smile, polished, polite, poisonous. She'd left that day promising herself one thing: never again will I ask to be seen. Back to the present. Collins was sweating now. "If you'll just wait a moment, I can." He reached toward her folder. Ava's gaze flicked down. "Don't touch it." The tone wasn't loud, but it cut through the lobby like a blade. Every conversation stopped. Even the printer at the back seemed to fall silent. Emily stood frozen by her desk. "Ma'am," the guard began softly, "please, let's not." Ava turned her head toward him, expression calm but absolute. "You already put your hand on me once today. Don't make it twice." The guard stepped back, instantly shame flooding his face. A child in the corner whispered to her mother, "Mom, why are they scared now?" Her mother didn't answer. Ava reached into the folder, pulled out her phone, and tapped the screen once. A single vibration. A notification flashed in a distant office across town, Protocol 9, owner present. The glass panels of the lobby caught her reflection, multiplied endless. She looked like an army of calm. Collins tried one last grasp at control. "If this is some kind of stunt, do I look like I need attention?" she asked, voice steady. No one dared answer. For a moment she looked around at the posters promising integrity, equality, trust, at the faces watching her, curious, ashamed, unsure. Her gaze lingered on Emily, the only one who had tried to help. Their eyes met. A silent nod passed between them. Then Ava picked up her folder again. 10 minutes, she said quietly. You'll want to use them wisely. She turned away, heading toward the glass doors once more, but this time her reflection looked taller, sharper, inevitable. Behind her, Collins whispered, "Call security again." Emily gasped. "Sir, don't, too late." The guard hesitated, then pressed his radio. At that exact moment, every light in the lobby flickered. The large display behind the counter blinked twice and froze. A logo appeared where the daily balance sheet should have been Johnson Holdings System Override. People gasped. The room went still. Ava paused at the doorway, half-turned voice barely above a whisper, yet it carried like thunder. This time I didn't knock. The fluorescent lights steadied again, but the room didn't. Something invisible had shifted. The air felt wired. On every terminal, the same notification blinked red, executive access in progress. Emily covered her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. Manager Collins tried to laugh, but his voice broke halfway. "This must be some kind of technical issue." He turned to the guard. "Go unplug the router." The guard didn't move. He was staring at his earpiece where a new voice had just come through. "Security Unit 4, stand down. Owner-level override in effect." "Owner-level what?" Collins barked. Ava stood near the door, calm as glass, one hand resting on the counter. Her phone vibrated once more. A short, crisp buzz. "Confirmed," said a voice through her earpiece. "Branch lockdown initiated. Awaiting your instruction, Miss Johnson." Every camera in the lobby tilted, slightly refocusing. For the first time, they were watching the right person. Ava turned slow and deliberate. People stepped back without knowing why. Her presence filled the space like gravity rediscovering itself. Miss Johnson," Collins stammered. "There's no need for." She cut him off with a look. "Where's your regional supervisor?" He blinked. "He's not in today." "Then I suggest you call the headquarters." He fumbled with his phone hands shaking. When the line connected, he forced a laugh. "Hi, this is Robert Collins, branch manager. We have a situation." The voice on the other end interrupted him sharply. "Mr. Collins, please step away from the counter." "Excuse me," effective immediately. "Your administrative access has been revoked." The color drained from his face. "What, there's been a mistake?" Behind him, the main screen now displayed a live video feed, a boardroom downtown. Executives in suits were standing around a long glass table watching him through the connection. And seated at the head of that table was a woman in pink. Ava didn't even glance at the display. Her attention stayed on the lobby, the murmuring crowd, the uneasy guard, the employees frozen between loyalty and fear. She spoke softly, each word cutting through the noise. "This isn't a technical issue. This is accountability." Emily's eyes welled with tears, not fear but pride. Collins stepped back, palms sweating. "Look, Miss Johnson, we didn't know." "That's exactly the problem," she said. "You never do." The boardroom feed flickered. A male executive's voice echoed through the speakers. "Miss Johnson, orders confirmed. The branch is under your direct authority." "What would you like to do?" Ava looked around slowly at every face that had watched her humiliation minutes ago. The mother and child, the whispering customers, the guard still frozen in place. Her answer came like a sentence passed. "Shut down the branch." The executive nodded. "Yes, ma'am." A soft electronic tone chimed. The lights dimmed. Doors locked with a mechanical click that felt almost ceremonial. Ava turned toward the staff. "You'll stay until I finish my audit," she said. "Every transaction, every complaint, every recorded minute from today." She picked up her folder, tucking it neatly under her arm. "And Mr. Collins?" He looked up, trembling. She leaned in slightly, enough for only him to hear. "Next time you doubt someone's worth, make sure they're not signing your paycheck." Then she stepped back, voice steady enough for the whole room. "Effective immediately, this branch is closed for restructuring." Someone clapped, a single hesitant clap that grew into applause from a customer near the door. Emily covered her mouth again, shaking her head in disbelief. Ava gave her a brief nod, quiet recognition between the brave and the witness. Then she walked out, her heels echoing like punctuation at the end of a lesson the whole world had just been forced to read. The room was still. No one dared move. Only the low hum of the air conditioner filled the silence, and even that sounded like it was holding its breath. Manager Collins stood behind the counterphone, still in his trembling hand. The call with headquarters had ended, but the echo of it, "Your access has been revoked," was still ricocheting through his skull. Ava turned back toward him. The light from the tall windows framed her silhouette, composed, regal, unshaken. She looked like she'd been standing there her entire life, waiting for this exact moment. "Miss Johnson," Collins stammered, I want to apologize." Her eyes didn't blink. "You should," she said softly. "But not to me. To everyone who watched you assume that power and decency can't share the same skin." He swallowed hard. "Please, I didn't mean—" "Of course you didn't," she interrupted, calm as ice. "That's the luxury of people who never have to mean it." Murmurs rippled across the lobby. A man near the window pulled out his phone, recording silently. Another whispered, "Wait, did she just say Miss Johnson?" The name spread like a quiet revelation, the kind that doesn't shout, it just rearranges the room. Ava stepped forward, her heels steady against the marble. "You called security on a customer who showed you identification," she said, her tone deliberate. "You accused her of fraud. You put your hands on her. And then," she glanced at the blinking monitors, "you learned she owns the place." The line hit like thunder. Gasps. A chair scraped. Even the guard took a step back. Collins's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked around, searching for support, but the faces staring back were no longer his audience. They were witnesses. Ava's voice dropped lower, now softer, but infinitely sharper. "You called me a fraud in the bank I own." Silence. The kind that tastes like justice. Emily covered her mouth, tears spilling over her fingers. The mother and child in the corner exchanged a look, awe, apology, something human. Ava kept her gaze on Collins. "I built this institution to prove that talent doesn't come with a color code," she said. "You turned it into a test of who's allowed to exist comfortably inside it." He tried to speak again. "Miss Johnson, please, it was a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Her eyebrow lifted. "No, this was clarity. You saw a black woman and assumed she couldn't possibly own what she'd built. That assumption just cost you your job." A ping echoed through the room, the sound of an email notification. Collins' phone lit up. "Subject termination. Effective immediately." He read it twice before realizing what it meant. The color drained from his face. Ava didn't look at him again. She turned to the guard instead. "You were following orders. Don't let anyone convince you that blind obedience is safety. Sometimes it's just cowardice dressed in uniform." The guard nodded, ashamed. "I'm sorry, ma'am." She nodded once. "So am I. For you." The boardroom feed above the counter remained live, executives watching silently. One of them spoke, his tone reverent. "Miss Johnson, the system confirms full shutdown of the branch. Would you like us to proceed with public disclosure?" Ava paused. Her eyes swept the room. The murmuring customers, the blinking screens, the scent of panic mixed with perfume and pride. "No," she said finally. "Let them learn by rumor. It travels faster than truth anyway." The line drew a few nervous laughs, even from those who didn't mean to. Emily smiled through her tears. Ava glanced at her. "What's your name, Emily, ma'am? Thank you for remembering what right looks like." Emily straightened. "I only did what anyone should." Ava smiled faintly. "Then let's hope more people start doing it." She turned toward the door. Each step was measured final. The moment she reached the threshold, she stopped, half-turned voice low, almost gentle. "I didn't come here to make a scene. You made one for me." And with that, she walked out, sunlight spilling over her shoulders like applause from the universe itself. Inside, no one moved for a long time. Because when power reveals itself truly quietly, even pride forgets how to breathe. The first system alert hit like a heartbeat. Then another. And another. On every monitor, red lines of code began to crawl down the screen. Access revoked. Account locked. Termination confirmed. The lobby lights dimmed to emergency mode, a low amber glow that made every face look raw, exposed. Collins' phone slipped from his hand, clattering across the marble floor. He bent to pick it up, but the device buzzed violently, then went dark. When he looked back up, the branch's large LED display had changed. The daily revenue chart was gone. In its place, one sentence pulsed in white over black. Branch 217, temporarily suspended by owner authority. A hush rippled across the room. No one breathed. It felt like watching a verdict being carved in real time. Jesus Christ, whispered someone near the counter. Ava stood still in the middle of it all, unbothered by the chaos she'd summoned. She didn't shout, didn't smile. She just watched the truth settle into every corner of the room like dust after a storm. The guard, the same one who had grabbed her arm earlier, approached hesitantly. "Ma'am," he said quietly, do you want us to clear the building?" Ava shook her head. "No. Let them see what accountability looks like." Emily stepped forward from behind the counter, voice trembling. "Miss Johnson, should I send the report to corporate?" Ava's gaze softened slightly. "It's already there." Behind them, the branch doors locked with a soft mechanical click. The sound was small, but it might as well have been thunder. Collins stumbled toward his desk. "Please, there has to be a way to fix this," he pleaded, voice cracking. "You can't just," was voice sliced through him, calm and final. "I can. And I did." He blinked at her disbelief, turning into something uglier. Panic, shame, maybe both. "This is my career," he whispered. "No," she corrected. "It was your privilege. You just mistook it for power." The crowd stirred, murmuring again. A man in a gray suit, a regular customer maybe, shook his head slowly. "I saw everything he said, to no one in particular." She didn't even raise her voice. A woman near the window started clapping, once hesitant, then again, and suddenly the sound spread, scattered at first, then steady. Not the wild applause of entertainment, but the solemn rhythm of respect. Ava didn't bow. She didn't even acknowledge it, because applause wasn't the goal. Accountability was. She walked past Collins, who stood frozen, pale, small. As she passed, her perfume lingered, quiet, expensive, unforgettable. She stopped just beside him. "When people like you look at women like me," she said softly, "you don't see ownership. You see inconvenience. Today I corrected your vision." Then she kept walking. Every step echoed like punctuation, the sound of power reclaiming its name. Behind her, Emily's computer chimed again. An automated notice appeared. "Manager Collins, contract terminated. Final payment pending review." Emily covered her mouth in shock. Ava didn't turn back. She simply said, "Forward that to HR." "Yes, ma'am." The glass doors unlocked with a faint click as she reached them. Outside, sunlight bled across the marble floor, gold and clean. The sound of the city drifted in cars, wind, distant laughter. Normal life returning after judgment. She paused at the threshold, letting the moment breathe. Behind her, the applause had quieted into silence. But it wasn't the silence of fear anymore. It was reverence. Collins sank into a chair, hands trembling. Emily stepped forward, staring at Ava like she was witnessing history, not scandal. "Miss Johnson," she said softly, "what happens to the branch now?" Ava turned slightly, sunlight framing her profile. "It rebuilds," she said, "with people who remember what respect feels like." And then she stepped outside, into daylight, into calm, into the kind of power that doesn't need introduction. Inside, the bank alarms finally silenced themselves, because the system had learned something human, and for the first time it obeyed the right person. Outside, the city moved as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Cars honked, sunlight shimmered off windshields, and people hurried past, oblivious to the quiet revolution that had just unfolded behind the glass doors of Branch 217. Ava stepped onto the sidewalk. The wind caught her hair, those soft, natural curls dancing around her shoulders, and for the first time that morning she let herself breathe. The tension that had clung to her body melted away with the sound of the city. She reached into her purse, pulled out her sunglasses, and slid them on. The reflection in the lenses showed the bank behind her, lights-dimmed blinds, half-drawn silhouettes still frozen inside. Justice, she thought, didn't always look like sirens and courtrooms. Sometimes it looked like a woman walking away quietly, finally, without asking permission. Her phone buzzed once. A message from her assistant. Headquarters confirmed. Collins removed. Staff audit in progress. Press requests incoming. She typed a short reply. No interviews. Not today. Her driver pulled up to the curb, a sleek black Tesla. The door opened automatically, but she didn't step in yet. She just stood there for a moment, watching the morning light spill over the street. Behind the glass, Emily watched her from inside the lobby. Their eyes met just long enough for a silent exchange of gratitude. Ava nodded once. Then she turned back to the city. Across the street, a young man filming on his phone lowered it, realizing she wasn't performing. She wasn't grandstanding. She was just existing, and that somehow was enough. As she began walking toward the car, her heels clicked in rhythm with the pulse of the city, confident, unhurried, deliberate. A journalist called out from the corner, microphone in hand. Miss Johnson, is it true you shut down your own branch? Ava paused. The city noise thinned around her like even traffic was waiting for her answer. She turned slightly, her expression calm, her voice steady. I didn't shut it down, she said. I reset the standard, the journalist blinked. Can you elaborate? Ava smiled faintly, that kind of smile that could end a conversation or start a movement. For years, she said, people like me have been told to stay calm, stay grateful, stay silent. Today, silence worked on my terms. She didn't wait for another question. She slid into the car, the door closing with a quiet hiss. Inside, her assistant's voice came through the intercom. Would you like me to release a public statement? Ava looked out the window. The city skyline rising in the distance, sunlight catching on the glass towers her company helped finance. No, she said softly. Let the story speak for itself. The car began to move. Outside, pedestrians stopped pointing at the bank logo, now flickering with an unfamiliar update under reconstruction leadership transition in progress. Ava watched the reflection fade in the glass. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, almost to herself, I didn't raise my voice. I raised the standard. Her assistant smiled through the speaker. That's a better quote than any headline. Ava exhaled a quiet laugh, the kind that only comes after peace has been earned. The car merged into traffic, swallowed by the hum of the city. Somewhere behind the bank doors unlocked once more, not for her but for the people who would rebuild it. Emily would later tell the story differently each time she remembered it. Sometimes she'd focus on the silence, sometimes on the sentence that ended everything. But always she'd say, when Ava Johnson walked out that morning, the room didn't just go quiet, it learned respect. And maybe that was the real ending. Not the shutdown, not the applause, just a woman who'd spent a lifetime being underestimated, finally walking away from a world that had no choice but to see her. The sunlight followed her car as it disappeared down the avenue, soft, golden, infinite, the kind of light that only shows up when truth does.